All right, well, we'll get started then. I think I gave the basic orientation to everybody. I don't see any new faces in the room. I did see Mary Beth your comment about. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get started then. Welcome to the class, and we got a lot of good information. We're going to go over some real basics tonight, and I'm going to try to explain everything just because it can get pretty elaborate. I'm going to start off with this slide presentation. Okay, so hopefully everybody will be seeing that. It might be a little bit of lag time between me flipping slides and different things, but anywho, we'll get started here. So basically what we're trying to address is practicality, how to prevent your passwords from being stolen, prevent your emails from being hacked, that being your email service provider, your account, and then bank securely. All these things hinge on your internet access. Okay, so pretty basic stuff that we have to do all the time, but we want to be able to do it in a secure fashion. So our next slide here breaks it down to what really most of this hinges on, and that is two factors. First is encryption, and secondly is what's called digital certificates. So both of these are really necessary to make secure authentication and privacy possible. Now let me define authentication. If I need to identify myself to somebody, for example, they want to check my age, or I maybe give them a photo ID. Now that authenticates, that proves my age or whatever relevant fact, my name to that individual. But it's issued by a third party, in this case, the state of Virginia. That's a means of proof of who I am. We'll talk about how we do that, which is through passwords to our banks and different things, but also how they do it to us. We need to understand that they're not some fly-by-night operation or somebody impersonating our bank. And secondly, privacy is also made possible through encryption. And so now when I say privacy in the sense that not being anonymous, in other words, like nobody knows, but in the sense that I take a friend aside and I say, hey, we need to talk privately in a room. Well, our conversation at that point is private, but other people could have seen us go into that room. So it's not anonymous, but the conversation is private. And that's what we're trying to establish when we communicate with our bank or some sort of other institution, or get access to our email. Now we're going to define encryption simply as a means by which we establish privacy of communication, in this case between 2 points, namely us and whoever is on the other end, our bank, our credit card company, our eBay, somewhere where we're buying something. And so that's what encryption really allows to be possible, that no one in between there, they could see the information pass the wire, but it's in cipher, it's unlegible, unreadable, and most importantly, undecryptable by anybody but those two endpoints. The second thing is those digital certificates, which, remember, I said proves authenticity of somebody and is usually confirmed by a third party. So those are those two things I wanted to make sure that we understood and are well defined. Okay, so we'll move on to our next slide about why this is so important. Encryption allows only you and that one other person to see the information, and especially when you think of your password, that's pretty important. Now, digital certificates, now notice here I say digitally signed certificates, so there's like a signature to these certificates, allow that party who you're connecting to prove to you that they are who they say they are. Bank of America, they are SunTrust, they are eBay, and not some fly-by-night operation or a hacker that's trying to get to you. Okay, so we'll move along to our next slide. And here is how we know that encryption is established. I have screenshots of 3 different browsers here. And this is what you want to see when you're going to a website. Now, most of you in the pre-class survey, said that you use Google Chrome. And so this top example is the one that you want to follow, where you go to a website. In this case, it's Google, but notice here, these all have something in common. They say HTTPS, and many of them have a little lock symbol to the left. And the Google Chrome and the Firefox examples have that. The Internet Explorer doesn't, but I think it might be on the right-hand side of the column or the bottom of the browser window. But that's what you want to have. You want to have that HTTPS connection. Very, very important. Now we're going to have kind of a little lab assignment. We've just glossed over this a little bit, that you want the HTTPS. That tells you it's an encrypted channel of communication, that only you and your bank know what that login and password is. So now, what we're going to have you guys do is, in a separate browser tab, so if you're using Google Chrome, at the top of your browser there should be a little plus symbol as you go across the tabs. Open up a different tab or open up a different browser. Go to somewhere that's important to you, like a banking site, a credit card site, something like that, where you have to log in. And go to that site. You don't need to log in. You don't need to type anything in. But on the login page, where it asks for your username and password, check and see if there's an HTTPS in the top URL bar where it has the website, like we saw in those examples. So everybody, this is a little lab exercise. If you can do that. We'll just take a little break while you all are looking that up, and we're going to consider some good and bad examples here in just a second. So, everybody, any questions down there? Now, I'm also going to start up a poll and see how many of you had that and how many of you didn't. All right, so we're going to start a little poll survey of you students and see how many of you, it should be popping up on your screen any second now. Okay, there you go. So feel free to check yes, my site had HTTPS, or no, my site did not have HTTPS. Alright, I'm going to share my web browser screen with y'all so you can follow along. And I'm going to use Firefox. Sorry, I know most of you use Chrome, but that's what I'm conducting the class in. Alright, so here in Firefox, let's go to a site that many of you noticed, and that is bbnt.com. Okay. My keyboard's on the fritz. bbnt.com. Let's try this one. bbnt.com. Alright, so here we go. This is one that many of you caught. Now you notice here on the page, on the right hand side, you have a login right over here on your right, but notice there is no HTTPS up in the top left-hand corner. I see some of you do use Firefox, so good. All right, now what does this mean? Well, it's not good. Let's take another example. Let's say we went to Bank of America. Some of you might be bank with them, bankofamerica.com. I can type. Okay, now you notice something drastically different. You do see an HTTPS, and even the color of the bar actually changed. Okay, so that's more of along the lines of what we want to see. Okay, so now I'm going to close out of this. We're going to go back to our slides, that giant one that I had up. All right. Back to the slideshow about definition of HTTPS. So it stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is complicated and gets into a lot of different things. Primarily web traffic is HTTP, but notice the S is the pivotal point here. It stands for secure, and that's very important to us. We want to be secure. All right, so let's break this down. So encryption allows us and our information to travel safely across the web. HTTPS ensures that, but it does not ensure that who we're sending it to is who they say they are. The digitally signed certificate does that, and it's like a proof, just like that photo ID. And once you combine those two, you get the ability to build trust. Now, in the case of the one we just considered, BB&T, their front page should be digitally signed, but it's not. But the field where you type in your username actually is encrypted if you were to look at the underlying code. But that's bad policy. It really should sign the entire page, just like most banking sites do. You'd have to, it's supposed to confirm to you that they are who they say they are. So we see on this page an example of how they do that. For example, in Internet Explorer, how they confirm to you that they are who they say they are. Now in the background, you can see this is a Google account login. It has HTTPS. Now in order to get to that certificate, you'd hit File, then Properties. You'd get this dialog box, Properties. Now notice it says Connection, TLS, AES. This is encryption. So we'll talk about that in a little while. TLS and SSL are almost synonymous. They're the underworkings of HTTPS. But in that Properties window, if you clicked Certificates button, the bottom right-hand corner, that'd be your second step, it would pop up this third step, this third window, which says Issued by Google Internet Authority. And so that's what we want to look for. Google and Microsoft are unique, and a few other companies like this, they actually have their own certificates. Here's another example, what you're most likely using, Google Chrome. Google Chrome, here also at Google HTTPS. If you click that little lock, it'll pop down and it will say Identity Verified. That's what you want to see. So that says that the digital certificate is signed by a trusted authority of the browser and that, that they are who they say they are, basically. All right, well, let's look at a third example. Now we're going to get into what we saw with the Bank of America. Remember, the color of the bar also changed and some added information was added in there. So you not only had HTTPS, the whole bar changed colors. Now notice here in these screenshots I have several different browsers and they did that. Or they even popped up extra information, Bank of America Corporation. This is because they have a special type of digitally signed certificate that's called an EV certificate, extended validation. They go through a lot of extra work and financial issues, insurance, liability analysis, all this stuff to get an EV certificate. And it really is seen on most major banking sites and things like this now. That's what you really want to see. And it's, once again, there to make it very easy to tell you that they are who they say they are. Now, here's this term, certificate authorities. They're the ones that issue the digital certificates to those corporations that have those web pages. And they have tools inside your browser that make that possible, those public certificates and keys. Now, here's some third-party guys that you might have heard of when you've been to a website. For example, Bank of America. If you clicked on that little lock or that green bar, it would have popped down VeriSign has identified this, has verified this. VeriSign, Thought, GoDaddy, DigiCert, Komodo, Symantec, who owns VeriSign now, all of those are certificate authorities. And so that's what you really want to see. Now, I'll open up just for a second for a few questions. Any questions at this point that we might have? I got to get used to the fact there's a little bit of lag time between me and the information. Okay, we do have one question coming in. So, our question is from Mr. Baker, Trevor Baker. His question is, why does the browser window for this class have a yellow triangle. I don't know. I can't. I'm not entirely sure. But anywho, so we'll move along then to our next section where we're going to talk about applying the same idea to email. So most of you in the pre-class survey use Gmail. And HTTPS is also a key in that. When you go to the website and you want to log into Gmail and ask for your username and password, you want to see that. That tells you your credentials are safe when they're transiting the wire. Also, you want that to persist through the whole session. You're composing emails, you're reading emails, you still want to see HTTPS up in the corner. Any sort of site like that where you want to maintain a direct channel that's not compromised in any way. Now, it might seem kind of trivial, but just a few years ago in our screenshot down here in the bottom right, Facebook, Yahoo, amongst others, I think even Google for a little while, did not conduct the entire email session in an encrypted HTTPS channel. And as a result, you could install this little browser plugin called Firesheep and go to any Wi-Fi spot, and you could hijack somebody's session while they were on Facebook. Once they logged in, you couldn't see their username and password because that was encrypted HTTPS. But once they were in, that session was maintained by means of session cookies, and those could be hijacked because they weren't encrypted. So you want that HTTPS through the entire process. All right, so let's define a little more about email. There were some of you that use email clients. Now, an email client is a program that fetches your email. Many of you have Android or iPhones, things like that, smartphones. All of those use email clients primarily. They go out and fetch the email on your computer. There was a few of you that I think used Thunderbird email client or Outlook. You might have heard of that. All of them are email clients. Now, how do you know that is secure? Well, there's two components to email. There's first the outgoing and incoming email. Outgoing is SMTP. Incoming is IMAP or POP3. Both of these connections need to be HTTPS or SSL or TLS, which for our sake of our consideration is going to be synonymous with HTTPS. Okay, so let's look at some practical examples. Some of you use iOS, iPhone, Apple products, iPhone. Here's what you want to look for to make sure that it is the way it's supposed to be. Under Settings, Email, Contacts, Calendar, then you tap the account name, let's say johndoe@gmail.com, and then you're going to look for Outgoing, and you tap on that, and then you tap on the primary account you're looking at, and down here, be the photo on the right, SMTP, you see SSL is clicked as on. That's synonymous for our consideration with HTTPS. Or under the Advanced button, we also have incoming email here in our left photo. Once again, you see use SSL on. That's what you want. You want it switched on. Okay, let's move along to another example. And all these slides will be posted after the class up on the main curriculum website. Example 2, Thunderbird. A few of you use that. In this case, you would click Tools, Account Settings, the account, johndoe@gmail.com, and then you'd click Server Settings under that, and then you'd see right here as it says Connection Security SSL TLS. That's what you want to see. Then on the right-hand example here, we have the outgoing mail. You go down that column on the left, outgoing mail, you check the email account you're interested in, and then down here it has the identification. It says Connection Security SSL TLS, so that's what you want. All right, so that way you know that your credentials are traveling across the wire or the Wi-Fi hotspot or wherever you're at in a safe manner. Now we're going to skip this example. That's Outlook 2007, but I don't think anybody's really using that. So one little thought about email and HTTPS. When I speak of that and the SSL and the TLS, those all being pretty much synonymous with the point we're trying to convey here, that establishes an encrypted connection up to your provider, up to Gmail, up to Cox.net. Once that email is in transit between, for example, Gmail to Yahoo or Gmail to AT&T.com, somebody's email address, there's no guarantees. In fact, sometimes it can be encrypted, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. In fact, most of the times it probably isn't. So you should treat email in that context, that it's like a postcard sent through the mail. Anybody can read it. Now, obviously, between you and your server, it will be encrypted, but once it goes out on the main internet trying to navigate to its destination, that won't be the case. Now, does anybody have any questions here on email before we move along to our password sections? Let's see. Okay, I think Alan's asking an interesting question, if I understand it right. So Alan's asking, do I have to do this for all my contacts? I'm going to try and understand it. I think what you're saying is this is for your email, so that nobody can hijack your password, your username to your Gmail, to your Yahoo account, to your business account. The people that are going to get your email, hopefully they would be doing the same. You've probably seen some people that don't, and their Yahoo account gets hacked and you get sent Viagra ads or something like that. Yes. Okay. I think this is getting into another discussion, which is, well, how do you keep email secure? Which is kind of another story. There has to be another layer of encryption. Some of you might have seen that in the email I sent out to you. It had a digital certificate attached to it that identified who I am. That gets into some other things that are outside our curriculum today, namely SMIME and PGP encryption in emails. Okay, so I think hopefully that answers Alan's question. All right, we're going to move over to best password practices and something called two-factor authentication. This is something y'all are going to hear a lot more about. All right, so good password habits we want to keep in mind. And feel free, if y'all have questions along the way, just pop that question into the chat room. I'm trying to monitor that at the same time. Good passwords need to have uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, special symbols. I have some examples there. Length often trumps all of this. You want the password to be as long as possible. In the old days, 8 to 10 characters was probably pretty good, but anymore you probably want a little longer than that. You want longer than 10 characters, maybe 12 characters. Okay, now down here I have an example next to this arrow of what a good password might be. And in fact, I had a program that generated that. We're going to talk about that here in a second. All right, what we don't want our passwords to be is we want to avoid these practices. We don't want to use our username. You know, we have our username and then our password's our username with some sort of weird blob on the end. We don't want that. We don't want to use dictionary words or string dictionary words together. We don't want to reuse passwords from one site to other, like our Facebook and our bank accounts are the same password. That's not good. Don't use things that you think are confidential, social security numbers, birthdays, etc. As confidential as those might seem, and we would hope they would be, they are actually very programmatically determinable. You know, especially think of birthday. I mean, there's only, you factor in somebody's 30, 40, 50 years old, there's only so many birthdays in a span of time, and it's easy for a computer to simulate those. And don't store your passwords on a file on your computer, something like that. That's not a good idea either. So what kind of help can we get for these situations? Well, we need what's called password management programs, a password manager. In fact, we need help, basically.